Hello, this is National Chess Master Bill Richards, also known as Rats, and I'm here to start a new video series, and I'm really excited about this. This series will chronicle my chess career from my very first rated chess games way back in 1972. And I'm really excited about this because you're going to get to see exactly how I played then. Now, my initial rating was 1465, and for most of you that are following my course and trying to better your chess, this is a perfect rating, because if you're a little bit below that, I'll show you the things that you need to do to reach the level of play I had, and then you can learn with me as I look back and observe my old games. Okay, I want to give you just a little bit of background about my chess. I've given some of it already elsewhere. Let's just cover it right here. I learned the game about 5 years old. When I was 9 years old, I discovered a chess book in the school library. I was in the 4th grade. Actually, it was in the public library in the children's section. I checked it out. I read it. I learned a little bit from it. Actually, I learned quite a lot. And I loved to play all during that time period, age 5 to 9. I'd play whoever I could, family members, neighbors, whatever, didn't matter. It was always fun to have a game. When I got into the 6th grade, I went over to the adult section of the public library, and I found that there were a lot of chess books, and I was just amazed. I checked out every single one of them. Not all at once, but I checked them all out. Now, some were too deep for me. I had no idea what was going on. But the ones that I could comprehend, I just read with fervent vigor. Okay, and then about that time I discovered the Sunday chess column in the Los Angeles Times. Grandmaster Isaac Cashdan used to write that, so I learned a little bit about that. And I taught myself chess notation by taking masking tape and pasting a piece over every square and writing the name of the squares down. And I learned with English descriptive notation, so each square had 2 names. And then I played over games and out of the newspaper and out of the books that I had. And a couple weeks after, I took the tape off and discovered I knew what to do. So a whole new light was open for me. I had a blast with it. When I got into the 7th grade, we actually had a chess club at school, and I entered that. And by the close of the year, I won the district championship for the 7th grade among all the local junior highs. And then we had the club again in the 8th grade. Then when I got into high school, we had a high school club. And we only had it for a year and a half. Then we lost our advisor, and we never had it again. In between the 7th and 8th grade, a club in my neighborhood opened up. It was for adults, anybody actually, and they didn't run serious tournaments. It was more of a casual place to play. But I found that, and I started going to it. So it gave me a chance to not only play against other school kids, but some adults too. And I held my own with some of the adults, and a lot of them were just way too good for me, but I had fun with that for about a year and then stopped going to that. The club dissolved. And then when I got in the 11th grade, I was continuing to read chess books. I read them both at my junior high school and my high school. Whatever they had, I read it. And I learned a lot with the works of Fred Reinfeldt and Irving Chernev. These were my favorite authors. Loved their work, loved to go over their books, and I can still recommend their work today. Okay, so when I was late in my 11th grade year, I was already age 17, I found out another adult club had formed nearby, and so I started going to that. And this club actually had actual tournaments, and I knew about Chess Life magazine. I had seen it before back at the first adult club I'd been to, but I didn't know how to subscribe. I guess I just should have asked the guy that had it. I thought I could find it at the newsstand, and I never could find it, so never did get a subscription started to it. But here I was able to join the United States Chess Federation and start competing in tournaments to get my first rating. Now, from a logical point of view, I'm past my prime as far as prime development years. I'm 17 years old, unrated. A lot of grandmasters become grandmasters at much younger than that. And so, in a way, the odds are kind of stacked against me. The fact that I still went on to make National Master, I want you to use that as an inspiration for yourself. If you're coming into chess a little bit later in life, or not exactly where you want to be with your ability, it can be done. And another thing about my career, I'm entirely self-taught. like I say, I read whatever books I could. I never took lessons. I played wherever I could, whenever I could, and I studied my games. And my online lessons program just pretty much, I looked back at my career and said, what did I do that I did right? And I focused my program on that, and then I mentioned things that will waste your time that you don't need to look at so that you can expedite your learning process. So anyway, without further ado, that's pretty much the summary of my early formative years of learning chess. And now here I am, age 17, almost an adult, and I got in my first club. And it took a while, about 2 months before they started a new tournament. There was one underway, so I got a chance to play a few casual games with some of the other players that participated. And this game was played July 21st, 1972. And the Fischer-Spassky match had just started, and we were about to experience a huge chess boom in America because of the popularity that Bobby Fischer brought to chess in America. Our club just grew by leaps and bounds in the coming months. Okay, but that's a whole nother story. Let's get down to this game. This fellow was also unrated, and I'd actually played him the week before, a casual game, which I won. And best I can recall, that particular game followed this one to some degree. And I think that's something to be said about that. You tend to play the same type of chess, and I've observed this in some of the people I've given lessons to. They play the same opponent over and over again, and a lot of the games take the same pattern. They conduct their attacks the same way. They conduct their defenses the same way. And I've seen it happen in some of my other games. And at some point when I do more series on my career, this basically is an under 1600 series. Well, what it took for me to break 1600, then I'll do one for under 1800 and under 2000 and under 2200. Like I say, I'm really excited about this. It's just going to take me time to get them all done for you and get them uploaded. And then, of course, you guys have to take the time to watch and learn from them. But you will learn. That I promise. And another thing, too, about a lot of these old games, I have this incredibly gifted memory. A lot of these games, I can remember, I can't remember the game played over, but I can remember basically what happened. And I can remember a lot of times when I made moves, what my reason was for making that move. And that's going to be very useful for you, because I'll show you how my thought process worked. A lot of times I made moves just based on total unsound principles. There were certain emotions that affected me, but I know why I played the moves I did. And you're going to find this very helpful. Of course, now I realize why a lot of the moves I played were poor, and I'll explain why they're poor. I'm only 1400 player back here. Give me a break. You're going to see some really lemons on my part. I mean, I had some horrible games, but you're going to learn from them, and that's the whole key. I don't mind showing my bad games. What's the big deal about that? Everybody loses games. So anyway, without further ado, let's get on to this one, and I'll demonstrate what happened. Okay. So far, we've pretty much all seen this position before. And he played a quieter line. This is known as the four knights defense, and that's easy to see. Why? Because they're four knights out, or four knights game, whatever it's called. Anyway, he then makes kind of a weak move. The normal move is to bring the bishop out to b5. This is the normal move, and I'm not going to go into the analysis of that. That's beyond the scope of this video. But he plays a quiet move, d3. Now, this doesn't really help his game much. It doesn't hurt him, but it doesn't really help him. What he's done is he's restricted the mobility of this bishop. This bishop is never going to be, or won't be, a very good piece for him for a long time. As a matter of fact, in this game, it never becomes a good piece for him, and you'll see. Okay, now I commit what is actually a mistake. I didn't realize at the time because I hadn't seen it before. And I've already shown this in a number of my videos. There's a little trick here called the center fork trick. White to play gets a very good game, and usually it's black that does this to white, but in this case, white has the opportunity. What white does is capture this pawn on e5, and if black retakes the knight, white gets this little pawn fork here in the center of the board, and there's some tricks to it. I'm not going to analyze it. In this particular position, black might get some counterplay with bishop b4, but suffice it to say that Usually this happens in other positions, and it's just not good for black. So analyzing that out is kind of beyond the scope of this video. I just wanted to point out the center fork trick to those that have never seen it before. But black's other alternative, rather than accepting the knight right now, is just give up the bishop with check. But this too is flawed in that white has acquired the bishop pair, and black doesn't really have an attack here. Eventually black will, or white will, what we call castle by hand. His bishop will come to e2. He'll swing his bishop will come to e2, giving room for the rook to come across the board, and at the appropriate moment the king will just come back. And often the king might tuck itself over on g2 if white's moving his g3 pawn. But and white has the bishop pair for what it's worth, and in an open position eventually that bishop pair is going to make a difference. Okay, so I didn't know about the center fork trick, but I'm bringing it up in order to instruct you better. Now let me get back to the game, and he played let's get back to the right position. Okay, he played what I consider a very weak move, and I see this move, we call it pawn to rook 3 moves in English descriptive notation. I see this move repeatedly in players rated under 1600 games. They just love to play it, and it's kind of a panic move. Okay, a lot of people are afraid of tricks where one side brings a knight into g5 and there's this attack on the f2 square. So by playing h3, white prevents it. He never has to worry about it. But the main problem there's two main problems with the move. Number one, it does not develop a piece. And number two, it creates a weakness on the king side. Normally, white is going to castle king side, and his king position is just a slight bit weaker. A lot of people recommend playing a pawn to rook 3 move to avoid getting back checkmated, but if you're careful, that won't happen. Okay, so this doesn't cost white the game, and it doesn't, in the same token, it doesn't win black the game, but generally it's not a great move. So I played pretty much the same move that I did in the casual game we'd played the week before, and I pushed with d5. And he did exactly what he did back then, and pinned my knight. Now he's threatening to take the pawn. Nothing's guarding it. My queen isn't guarding it because his knight on c3 will take it. So what I do is I push, and then he's able to get knight to d5 in. Now I'm going to get some double pawns, or well, maybe not. I will get some double pawns here. Pretty much this is where my memory of the other game is lost. I know I took double pawns in that game, and what happened, I don't know. I just know I won the game. But here I come up with not a very good move at all. What I need to play is bishop e7. Now, why didn't I play it? Okay, what bishop e7 does is it prevents me from getting doubled pawns. It also sets up a little trick. Okay, and I'll show that in just a moment. The reason I didn't play bishop e7 is my line of thinking back there. I know that bishops are worth more than knights. This is what the books have told me. And you don't want to give up bishops for knights. Okay, that doesn't mean you always have to or not to, but logically speaking, I rejected the move for that reason. Also, I was taught to move a piece once in the opening, not twice. Well, here white's moved a piece twice. Why can't I? Well, I just didn't think that far. But anyway, bishop e7 is the correct move, and it also sets up a little trick. Let me show you. Okay, bishop e7. Now let's suppose, for instance, white develops. Okay, whenever I go into a possible line, I have a term for it. I call it fantasy chess. It's not that the position's a fantasy, it's just a possible position. Doesn't mean it's the only position. There's going to be a lot of variations, but I'll show one, maybe two variations, just to give you a feel for the points I'm trying to make. In this case, it's a little trick. Okay, now black has a nice move. Knight takes knight. Okay, now black is threatening to win this bishop. Okay, so if white takes, black just takes with the knight on d5 and is up a piece. Now, naturally, white doesn't have to do that, but there's some positions where this little trick can come in, and you have to be aware of it. It doesn't have to be in this exact same position. Actually, black can do, or white can do okay with this move. He can try it. Then he doesn't lose a piece, but he's really not getting a good game here. What's white going to do? Continue this out. Let's take. Oops, black's move. Sorry. Black will take the pawn, and you can't take with the king. Got to take with the queen. Okay, so black's a pawn ahead. His queen's developed. There's a threat on g2. Black has the better game. But this doesn't mean that white's going to fall into this. I just wanted to illustrate this little concept here. Okay, so as I said, what I should have played was bishop e7, and it's okay if he takes my bishop. I'll just take back with the queen, and I'm fine. Matter of fact, I even have some threats here. Okay, but I'm kind of closed-minded. And this is one of the things I want to just mention. I've mentioned before in my lesson 001, I've talked about thinking deficiencies. A lot of the times we don't make moves because we're trained not to make moves. And it's not only that we don't make them, we don't analyze beyond. In other words, we set up this little brick wall and say, oh, can't do that, don't look any further. Well, you have to look further. So my evaluation in this position, the thinking deficiency says, well, I can't play this move. I've given up the bishop for the knight. Okay? But in all reality, I'm okay here. I don't have double pawns. And for what it's worth, I have a threat. I'm threatening to play queen b4 check, winning a pawn. Even though it could be risky to take that pawn, white hasn't really demonstrated much with his opening. He's played it passively. He doesn't have his pieces out. I can do this. Now, yes, white has time to deal with the threat. Suppose he plays a3. Okay, let's just suppose a3. Okay, well, I just continue my development. I can play bishop e6 or bishop d7. I can even play h3 or h6 rather, and offer him to take the knight back. But you see, I didn't, because I had a brick wall up, and the brick wall said, don't give up your bishop for his knight, and my bishop for his knight, and that was wrong, obviously. Okay, so let me get back to the correct position of the game. Okay, so when he played knight d5, as they say, I made kind of a weak move, but I remember all the reasons why, and I've just explained it. I played h6. Now, probably the best move for white is to play bishop takes knight here, and after pawn takes, he's got a decent knight on d5, but maybe there's some complications to it. But instead he played knight takes, and it's not a bad move, but it kind of helps me a little bit, because now, although I have double pawns, I'm tempoing his bishop. He's going to have to deal with that. Okay, so he comes back to h4. Okay, now what happens next? Well, I get tricky. I see a check and I give it, and that gives him a chance to just immediately lose the game with c3, because after c3 his pawn position falls apart like a house of cards. I play pawn takes pawn. Here, I'll illustrate it. And if he takes back, I have a fork, bishop takes c3 check, and if he just ignores it, I'm threatening to play c2 check, winning his queen. So I saw the threat, the possibility of doing this, and I did it. So he saw it, and one thing too, when you set up a one move threat, you should always expect your opponent to see it. And it's common to make these one move threats at this rating level, but they're not going to win you games. You have to, as you progress through the rating classes, you have to go into more strategic maneuvering, and my more advanced videos show good examples when I'm as a master playing another master and I have to do all this maneuvering to try to achieve some aim. That's a whole different ballgame. But one move threats generally aren't gonna help. Okay, so he saw it, and he played his knight back to d2, and now I finally did something smart, and I developed a piece. And now he makes a one move threat. Okay, he develops his queen. Now he's attacking my pawn on f6, I do need to deal with it. And I come back to e7. Now white now makes kind of a surprising move. Normally you would expect him to play bishop e2 and castle kingside, but maybe he doesn't want to do that. Maybe he's afraid because I have this open file that I could attack his king. But instead, white castles queenside. And once again, the thinking deficiency strikes. Just 10 days before this game was played, the Fischer-Spassky match had started. And if you're familiar at all with that match, game one, Fischer committed this crazy blunder. He grabbed a rook pawn with his bishop, and Spassky trapped it. And Fischer thought he could get it out, and he couldn't. He missed something in the end of it. And he still could have drawn the game, but that's a whole other story. But if you look at this position, I have that same possibility to take the pawn. So I'm sure I saw it, but I believe can't remember everything. I remember a lot of things. I believe that I rejected it because I say, well, I can't do that. He plays b3 and my bishop's trapped. But I didn't look further. Let's go ahead and do it. Bishop takes pawn. Maybe you see it already. Okay, if he pushes his pawn, suddenly black has a checkmate. Just like that. Now, how could I miss that? I've worked tactics out of books. I understand all the basic concepts, the discovered check, the forks, removing the guard, all these tactics. I understand them. How could I miss that? Well, I think it goes back to a thinking deficiency, and there's two of them. Okay, let's put the pieces back. What I see, or what I say, is I can't take this pawn because my bishop will get trapped. And then I say I can't move this bishop because then I'll lose my pawn. And that's exactly what I thought. But I'm inexperienced. You got to cut me some slack. You're inexperienced too, perhaps. If you're still watching this, I would say there's a good chance you're gaining a lot from this insight. So the best way is when you have a thinking deficiency, when you see that brick wall come up and say, oh, I can't do that, justify yourself with analysis. Justify with what's happening on the board, not with what your brick wall says. So I didn't see it, and instead I come up with a totally perplexing move. You'd be surprised by it, and I know exactly why I played it. Okay, I played rook g8. That move seems to defy all logic. But I know why I played it, and I'll tell you why, because you may not get it. Logic, you'd think I'm trying to attack his king. Well, his king castled the other side. But at this point in my chess playing career, I was very materialistic. Okay, I would grab pawns and I would hang on to them, and sometimes I'd grab gambited pawns and get attacked brutally, and I'd hope to survive it, but then I'd find out I didn't. I had to learn the hard way. Okay, well here I'm a little concerned about that pawn on f6. I don't want to give it up. And my plan is to put the rook on g6 and defend it. If I do that, then my bishop on e7 or my queen on d8 is free to move. I don't want to move it. I don't want to move it, either one in this position, because I'll lose the pawn. Okay, but I could have given up the pawn. Let's just put the queen on d7 for the sake of argument. But you see, my thinking deficiency said don't give up the pawn. So he takes it. Okay, now he's on my rook now. So what? You know, my development is better. I'm getting ready to castle. I could have given it up, but I didn't have to. But anyway, I missed bishop takes a2, and I elected rook g8, which is not the best move. Okay, so what does he do? He plays bishop e2. Now, if you know the position, I've already shown you what I could have done last move, and I didn't. It's still there. So I come up with a whole new plan. But I still had a second chance to take on a2, and I missed it. I played a5. Now, what's the point of a5? Well, I want to run that pawn down the board as far as I can and try and open up his position. Maybe I'll be running the b pawn up along with it. I know that that's where his king is. If I want to attack it, I'm going to have to shove some pawns. It also gives my rook on a8 a little scope if I want to swing it around somewhere. Okay, so what does he do? he doesn't want my pawn going any farther, or maybe he saw that I was threatening to take his pawn. I don't know. I didn't ask him, and I didn't even realize it until I first looked at this game after all these years. I still remembered the things that I remember that I'm telling you about, but I didn't even know about bishop takes a2. Didn't even check it until I picked up this game again. Okay, so what do I do next? Well, I send another piece into the attack, and he comes up with knight c4, and now I need to open up the lines on the queen side, so I played c6, and the idea behind that is to play b5. And at this point, he thought maybe my attack was something dangerous. Well, it really isn't. But he decided to run for the hills. He comes up with this move, king d2. He wants to transfer his king to the king side. And then suddenly I'm going to have nothing there to attack. So what do I do now? Well, I just continue with what I was doing because I didn't really have any other kind of plan. I'm tied down to guarding this pawn on f6 for the moment. Oh, I explained how I'm going to take care of that, and I will shortly. I went and attacked his knight, and he puts his knight back here, and I come up with another little gem. Let's see. Sorry. Okay. Just trying to find another PGN score. Okay, knight a2. Now, it looks kind of a pretty odd move. At least I found the right square a few moves too late. I should have been taking a pawn down there with my bishop. But what's the idea of knight a2? Well, I'm making a one-move threat. That's the whole idea. Now I'm threatening bishop check, and he gets a little embarrassed here because he has to start giving up stuff. Okay, but it's his move, and he has a chance to defend that. And he does. He puts his king on e1. And now my bishop b4 check, it just runs out of steam. He just runs his king to f1, and what do I have? Nothing. But that's how I was thinking. So in order to move either the queen or bishop, I did what I was set out to do earlier. I went and I guarded my pawns. Okay, now f6 is 3 times guarded, and it's only attacked twice. So I'm free to move my queen or my bishop, and I've let the rook take its place. Okay, so he decides his knight on a3 is out of play. I guess he could take on this, but it's my turn to sack a pawn. I'll get some immediate attacking chances with queen b6, and then my queen will be penetrating into his position, so he didn't want that. He tries to redeploy his knight now, and he brings it back to b1. And I've decided my knight on a2 is not going anywhere, so I bring it back to b4. And at this point, he decides that he wants to try to generate some activity. I remember he commented right about this time that he would like to castle, but it's illegal. He cannot castle a kingside. He's already castled it, and he castled the queenside. Now he's come back. But I guess that maybe that's okay if he does castle, because I've got that half-open G file that I give up the doubled pawns for, and maybe I can still get something on that file. I don't know, but he can't castle, so it's beyond that. Anyway, he plays c3. Now, logic, if I was playing this today, I would just bring the knight back to c6, and I'll show you why. I'm inviting him to give me an outpost if he wants to take my pawn. And look at that knight. It's just sunk into his position with tempo. It's controlling a lot of key squares, and he's close to losing this game. Where's he going to put his queen? Okay, he can't put it on g3 or g4. Both those squares are covered. If he puts it on e3, I have knight c2 check. That pretty much leaves him one square. Queen a5. Or h5 rather, and I suppose I have a lot of good moves here. Rook takes g2 is one of them. I can give the check with the knight if I want. I can, rook c8, taking the open c file. Black has all sorts of good moves here, but I didn't even consider that move. I guess I was one of those guys that would trade pieces and trade pawns when they were offered. So what I did was, I get the right point, he played c3. I took his pawn, okay, and, oh, went too far. sorry. It's the thing about the PGN here at chess.com. Sometimes you can get in the wrong line accidentally. Okay, here we go. B takes E3. I'm getting used to it. I'm getting better at it. But anyway, now I have to deal with my knight. Now I come back. Whoa. Don't tell me I did it again. Okay, I did it again. You told me. Okay, these videos are fun. There's always something funny happening in them. Okay, so B takes C3, knight C6. Okay, here we go. Now he comes up with, he's going to attack me now. He comes up with a little combination to win a pawn. Okay, D4. And I walk right into it. And now he plays what we call a Zwischenzug. It's a German term for an in-between move. Normally you'd expect white to take back. But instead of taking back on D4, he's taken this pawn, and he has a threat. He's threatening to win a piece and more. Then pick up the rook, too. So I have to deal with that. And I come back, and now he takes my knight, which is guarding D4. And I take with the... Let's jump a little quick. Bishop takes C6. And he takes here. Now, white is a pawn up. And look at my 4 pawns. They're all separated, doubled, isolated. I do have a passed pawn for what it's worth. And both kings are caught in the center. Whose king is safer? Probably black's is, simply because white's not poised to attack it. And I could castle queenside, but it's not legal in this position. But anyway, for what it's worth, I also have a threat. I'm threatening to take his knight on D3. And what happens here is my opponent commits a blunder here real quick, and it costs him the game. He blunders right now. What he needed to play was knight D2, and that's perfectly logical because he's undeveloped his knight, and he's got to get it developed and get it in play. But he comes up with queen D3 here, which is just a bad move, and it basically limits the activity of his rook. And one nice thing about having the 2 bishops, that's some compensation for the pawn I'm behind, is that the board is opened up and they have a lot of activity. So I see that I can win some material. And I play bishop c5. And now if you look, his rook is stuck. It's going to lose itself for a minor piece. Winning the exchange, they call it in the United States. Winning the quality, they call it elsewhere. But he really is going to lose the material now. And he basically elected a poor choice. He just made a gross blunder. He played rook d6. I guess his logic is, he didn't explain it to me. My best guess, his logic is, well, if he's going to give up the rook, he wants to get his queen activated. But unfortunately, his queen is now overworked. It's guarding 2 pieces. So I take the rook off, and I'm a rook up, and he takes the bishop, but unfortunately he's unprotected his knight on b1, and I grab it. Now I'm an entire rook ahead. He has a threat on c6, but that's easy to deal with. No matter where he moves his king, I'm going to take on e4 with my queen, and I'm guarding c6, and I'm a clear rook ahead, and he has lots of problems. So he basically decided to resign. And that was the game. That was my experience of my very first tournament game. What can I say? I was a little lucky here in the end. He fell apart first, but at this rating level, a lot of the moves we make are mistakes. They're not gross blunders, but they're mistakes. And again, what you saw from me, this was basically my first tournament game. I played nothing but casual games, and the tournament games I played in like junior high school, they were just sit down and play. They weren't timed, and they expect you to move quick, and the game's ended. So I never really played a long game before. It's played under a time control of 40 moves in 100 minutes each, and if you made time control, you got an extra hour to make your next 25 moves. These are ideal time controls to learn in. On the internet, you tend to see much faster games. A lot of games are played at time controls of like 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It's not enough. You need time, like this game, like in this game. That way you can analyze things out and play your better moves and not have to make a lot of weak moves simply because you're having to move quick because of the clock. Okay, I thank you so much for your time. I'll be making another one of these very soon and getting it uploaded. I look forward to your feedback on these, and most importantly, I'm hoping you learn something from these, and I know you will. You just have to sit down and see why I was making the moves I did, and how I was able to eventually start correcting the little deficiencies I had, and it's going to be a great experience to go over these games. Take care. Thanks.